Welcome back to RGO Photo. I'm Chris. Today we're going to compare the lenses from the $700 budget full frame video we did a few back. So we're going to look at the Nikon 24-120 f4 against the Canon 24-105 f4. Both of them have lens stabilization, though I would imagine the Nikon is a little better because it is a newer lens by a good number of years. Now, the Canon and the Nikon are both weather resistant to some degree. You obviously can't submerge them, but you should be able to get a light rain on them and be fine with both. And with both of these cameras, the D600 and the Canon 6D. You know, I wouldn't want to stand out there in a torrential downpour with both cameras and think they're both going to work at the end of the day, but I don't know if I do that with any camera. So to compare these, what we're going to do, we're going to split this into two videos. First video is going to be about comparing very similar shots I took with both cameras, as well as checking out the background blur to see how they render the out of focus areas, the bokeh and everything, because to me that's a pretty important characteristic of a lens, unless you're talking about landscape or maybe architecture where you're using a very high f-stop number to make everything in focus and there is no background blur. But with these, with the ability to zoom in and kind of get into those portrait ranges of the 70, 85, 105 millimeters, you know, you want to see the background out of focus, so you would probably want that to be pleasing. So that's what we're going to do here. In the next video, we're going to shoot these on the test board right here at 24, 50, 85, 105, and then I'm going to compare the 105 of the Canon versus the 120 of the Nikon. So that's 5 different focal lengths, and we're going to do 3 apertures at each. There'll be at least 3 examples at 24, 50, and 85 millimeters of comparing them, what they look like, and then we're going to test them on the test chart. So anyway, let's get started. Today we're out to get some comparative photos. I've got the Nikon D600, the Canon 6D, and they have the Nikon 24-120 and the Canon 24-105. I'm out to get some comparative shots so that we can do a comparison video. We're out here to do that. Sunflowers are finally out, so we're going to go back right over here and get some shots of the sunflower and hopefully maybe not get that hobo shopping cart in the photo. But anyway, I want to compare, we'll do sharpness, or maybe at this point we've already done sharpness in the video. We'll do that on the test board. And I want to see the bokeh, so I'm trying to find shots that set up for background blur and just see how they each translate that. See if it's a nice smooth transition, if it's a pleasing blur, or if it's a messy scattered bunch of mess back there. So that's what we're going to do today. And I've also got the 50 millimeters with me, the 1.8s. So we're going to get our comparative photos, because we're going to also do the 50 millimeters, and maybe we've already done that at this point. I don't know what order I'll put these videos out, but we're going to do some comparisons. And we're going to do this part like you're at the optometrist office. Do you like photo 1 or photo 2? Photo 1 or photo 2? All right, with those photos side by side, let's go in here. So here's our focal point. The Nikon is on the left. So in this case, it kind of looks like it might be a little sharper right here. We're at 35 millimeters f4. I'd say the Nikon maybe looks a little sharper right there. So let's go back to this flower and check out that background. See how that background blur is. Not a ton of difference. It's different, but not that different. Let's check this one. Again, it's different, but not that different. All right, so here we're just going to kind of do a example shot. We're going to focus on this little brick
pillar thing and be out far enough to get pieces of the bench into the next pillar and maybe pieces of the next bench. So we're going to sit out this way.
So here we're at 70 millimeters. And do you like photo 1 or photo 2? I should say 70 millimeters, f4. Photo 1 or photo 2? Let's look at them side by side. We'll keep the Nikon on the left today when we do the side by sides. So Nikon's on the left, Canon's on the right. Obviously I got a little different exposure there going on. But here was the focal point. Getting that little bit of background blur already right here. Let's go up to this roof. That's a roof, the pitch of a roof. Again, see, it's a little different in the rendering, but really not much at all. Go way back there. All right, so do you like photo 1 or photo 2? Photo 1 or photo 2? So here on the vertical shot, again, focal point, same place. To me, they just kind of render very similarly with that background blur. Again, it just, to me, looks more like an exposure difference because the Nikon does expose a little differently when you put the meter centered. That's one of the downfalls of shooting two different cameras back to back. You don't get used to the one versus the other, so I just shot all of these with the center exposure.
All right, here, what I'm going to do is got the two swings here. The chain is in the sunlight, so we should have some kind of highlight points back there. So I'm going to focus on the second chain, which is the farthest one in the first swing. That way I'll get the two other chains in the background and this other one in the foreground, so we can have a real good look here. And I'm going to try maybe a couple focal lengths just to see if I can get them all in. I may have to slide more to the right to get them more in line on a longer focal length, but let's start right here, and then I might have to switch to over here. All right, so that was probably 52, 53 millimeters.
Here we are at 52 millimeters. Do you like photo 1 or photo 2? Photo 1 or photo 2? All right, let's put them side by side. So we got the Nikon on the left, and as you can see, we focused on the chain here on both. Now look in the background here. They both kind of got rounded background blur right here behind the focus point. Let's check out the close chain, just kind of for its blur, its foreground blur. Now back here. And we'll go to that other chain. Look at the round highlights back here on the play structure that's good ways behind the swing set. All right, we're going to go back to 92 millimeters. So we're just going to jump straight into it here, focused on the chain. 92 millimeters. And look at the foreground blur on this closer chain. Looks like maybe just that slight difference in exposure more than anything. And then we'll go to the background chain here. Look at those highlights in the middle of the frame. Pretty darn round on both. But as you go closer to the top, the Canon looks like it gets a little more cat-eyed, but not by much. Not by much at all. Let's go to the very bottom of that chain. They're also not round down at the very bottom. You could make an argument down here, the Canon or the Nikon over here is a little more ovally than the Canon, but again, it's not that much of a difference. Let's go to the one that's a little closer. Similar story, right in the middle. Similar story, nice and round in the middle. So what about the background? See these highlights back here on the play structure? Moving to 105 millimeters, again the focus point is on the second chain here. So check out the background highlights, the foreground here. Go down into the low right on those two guys. Again, pretty darn round in the center portions of the frame, close to round anyway. Get down at the bottom, they're going to be a little oblong. At 105, let's go to that third chain and check those ones out up high. Looks like the Nikon's a little more round there. But anywho, looking at the background in general, I just probably wouldn't choose one or the other.
While I'm here shooting the 50 millimeters, might as well switch lenses. That 50 is tough. And we'll shoot the 24 to 10 whatevers here.
Here we are side by side, Nikon on the left still. This is our focal point right here. So looking at this out of focus foreground. Look up in here. And in the 50 millimeter video, I didn't know what these lines were, but they're actually the shadows cast by the pergola top up here. So that's what those lines are, as well as these lines back here. These are the shadows cast. So look at the background, the sky, the blurry sky. Let's take a look at this guy. Check down in this corner a little bit. You can tell that's on the focal plane, or close to it anyway. Right now we're going to go into just another couple example photos side by side and check these out. So here we have this sculpture, and what I did notice as a product of the camera sensor more so than the lens was that the Nikon on the left was a little easier to bring out more detail in this shadow, because this was they were both basically just a black silhouette against the sky. But let's look at the stop sign over here in this corner. Not stop sign, street sign, it's the walk, don't walk sign. So they basically render that out the same. Pikes Peak in the background. think it does they both do a pretty good job. I know what their ratings are as far as their dynamic range of each camera. In this case, the camera, not the lens. Sometimes you can notice the difference and sometimes you can't really, because I mean the 6D is not that bad in dynamic range. I'm sure it's not as good as the D600, but it's also just not terrible. Anybody that says that they're night and day difference, it's a little bit of exaggeration. You do have the Canon and Nikon wars. The people who are diehard one fan or the other will figure out a way to slander the other, but they're both very similar. But I would say it was easier to pull up some of the details in the Nikon in the shadows. But I think we all know Nikons have great dynamic range. It's just the 60 is just not that bad. We got the Canon or the Nikon on the left still. And go back to this street sign here just to check out that background blur. Maybe the Nikon's maybe a little more attractive here. Go in right here around the focal point. They both do a nice job. Check out the sign over here. Obviously they were shot at a different time. You got don't walk here and you almost are about to not be able to walk here. Look at that truck in the black background. You can almost read that sign saying one way on the Canon side. There's a nice little thing to kind of look at and compare. Just like which one do you find more attractive? And I'll be honest, I could take either or. Another example, when we look at them side by side, the only reason I think I could tell the difference here is that the Nikon, I could pull a little bit of extra kind of not detail but more contrast in the between the light side of the steeple and the dark side of the steeple. If you can just kind of see that, you can see these kind of windows here and you can almost not see them. It almost looks more like just a dark strip over here. Again, that's more a product of the camera than the lens, but here's our focal point. Both seem pretty sharp enough there. Let's take a look up here just for background blur purposes. Is one nicer than the other? I got two more example photos we're going to look at side by side, and that's going to be the difference between 105 millimeters and 120 millimeters when standing at the same place with the same subject, being focused at the same subject. So let's check that out. Nikon on the left, Canon on the right. Clearly we got a little bit different of exposure, but this is the difference. If you take this bush into consideration right here to look at, you can see you got on the Canon, because it's 105, you got this other tree sticking just into the frame, and you do not here. And likewise over here, this bush in the very corner of the Nikon, you can see almost the whole thing on the Canon. So that's the difference at a distant subject. These horses were 150 yards away. They were not close at all. So now let's go check out this other example. So again, Nikon on the left, and you can see that you can barely see the triangle on this part of the sign of downtown campus here, and you can see just a little bit of this railing, whereas on the Canon side you got more of that diamond shape and you got more railing. So that's me sitting on the opposite curb shooting across this way. So that's your difference in perspectives between 105 and 120 in an urban environment there. So if you're interested in getting either of these lenses and you saw the potential for them in this video, then I would suggest you just skip the next video I'm putting out, because that's just going to be the test board and the kind of the technical sharpness of them compared against each other. So from the example photos, they're, to me, to my eye, they're so close to being the same that I wouldn't pick one or the other for anything I saw today on these example photos. And in using these back to back, obviously I've got a lot more photos than just these, but in using these two and looking at them, I wouldn't pick one or the other just based on the photographs themselves. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you check out the next video. I will post that tomorrow, so it'll come out the day after this one comes out, just so you can also look at the actual test chart and see what that's got going on. So we'll put those on the test chart for the more technical side of their, I guess their sharpness is what we're looking for. Hope you liked this video. If you did, give us that thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down there. And as always, thanks for watching.